Jake Martinez wiped the sweat from his forehead as he crawled through the narrow maintenance tunnel of Station Alpha 7. The old mining station orbited a dead rock in the Vega system, and everything about it felt worn out and tired. Just like Jake felt most days. He had been working on freight ships for 5 years now, fixing broken things and keeping old machines running. It was not the life he had dreamed of as a kid, but it paid the bills and let him see the stars. The New Horizon was his home now, and Captain Lisa Hayes was fair to her crew. The problem today was a busted air filter in the station's east wing. Someone had to crawl in and replace it, and Jake was the smallest guy on the crew. He pushed his toolbox ahead of him and tried not to think about how much his knees hurt against the metal floor. When he reached the filter housing, Jake stopped and listened. There was a sound coming from somewhere nearby, a soft whimpering, like a hurt animal might make. Jake had grown up on a farm in Texas before joining the merchant fleet, and he knew that sound well. He followed the noise through a side passage he had not noticed before. The whimpering got louder as he moved deeper into the unused part of the station. His flashlight beam swept back and forth until it landed on something that made him freeze. In the corner of a small storage room behind some old crates was a creature unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It was about the size of a house cat, but that was where the similarity ended. Its fur seemed to change colors in the light, shifting from deep blue to silver to purple. It had large, round eyes that looked almost human in their intelligence. Most striking were the thin, wing-like flaps along its sides that reminded Jake of a flying squirrel. The creature was hurt badly. Dark burns marked its side, and one of its wing flaps hung at an odd angle. When it saw Jake's light, it tried to crawl away but could barely move. Jake's first thought was to call Captain Hayes. There were rules about this kind of thing. You did not touch unknown alien life forms. You reported them to the authorities and let the science people handle it. That was the safe thing to do. But looking at the small, injured creature, Jake could not bring himself to walk away. The thing was clearly in pain and probably dying. Its breathing was shallow and fast, and its beautiful color-changing fur had faded to a dull gray. Jake set down his toolbox and moved slowly toward the creature. He kept his voice soft and calm, the way he used to talk to injured animals back on the farm. "Hey there, little guy," he whispered. "I am not going to hurt you." The creature watched him with those large eyes but did not try to run again. Maybe it was too weak, or maybe it somehow understood that Jake wanted to help. Jake pulled out his emergency medical kit. It was basic stuff meant for human injuries, but some things were universal. He had antiseptic spray, bandages, and pain medication. He also had a small scanner that could detect internal injuries. Moving very carefully, Jake began to clean the burns on the creature's side. The animal tensed up at first, but then seemed to relax as it realized Jake was trying to help. The burns were not as bad as they looked. Someone or something had hurt this creature with an energy weapon, but the wounds were healing already. The wing was more complicated. Jake was not a doctor, but he could see it was not broken, just badly bruised. He made a soft splint using medical tape and a piece of plastic from his toolbox. The creature actually seemed to help him, holding still and positioning itself to make Jake's job easier. When Jake finished with the medical work, he sat back and really looked at the creature for the first time. It was beautiful in a way that made his chest feel tight. The fur was starting to show color again, shifting through shades of green and gold. But it was the eyes that got to him. They were filled with intelligence and something that looked like gratitude. "You understand me, don't you?" Jake asked quietly. The creature tilted its head slightly, and Jake could swear it nodded. Jake looked around the storage room. It was cold and dirty, no place for an injured animal to recover. He made a decision that went against every regulation in the book. "Come on, little guy. Let's get you somewhere safe." He gently lifted the creature, surprised by how light it was. It did not struggle or try to bite him. Instead, it seemed to curl up against his chest, seeking warmth. Getting back to the New Horizon without anyone seeing him took some careful planning. Jake waited until the corridor was empty, then hurried to his quarters. His room was small but private, and he had a spare blanket that would make a good bed. Jake set up a corner of his room with the blanket, a bowl of water, and some of his emergency food rations. He did not know what the creature ate, but the nutrient. Bars were designed to keep humans alive, so maybe they would work for other species too. The creature seemed to approve of its new home. It settled onto the blanket with what looked like relief and closed its large eyes. Jake watched it for a while, already knowing he had made a choice that could get him in serious trouble. But as he looked at the peaceful expression on the creature's face, Jake knew he would make the same choice again. Some things were more important than rules. Jake woke up the next morning to find the creature sitting by his bed, watching him with those large, intelligent eyes. The burns on its side looked much better, and its wing flap was no longer hanging at that terrible angle. The healing speed amazed Jake. What would take weeks for a human seemed to happen overnight for this little being. He sat up slowly, not wanting to scare his new roommate. The creature made a soft, chirping sound that somehow felt friendly. Jake smiled and reached out his hand carefully. The creature sniffed his fingers, then rubbed its head against his palm like a cat might do. "Good morning to you too," Jake said softly. "You look a lot better today." The creature's fur shifted through colors again, this time settling on a warm golden shade that reminded Jake of sunrise back home in Texas. He decided right then that he would call it Shimmer because of the way its fur changed colors. Jake had to report for duty in 20 minutes, but first he needed to figure out what to do about Shimmer. He could not leave the creature locked in his room all day, but he also could not let anyone else see it. As if reading his thoughts, Shimmer stood up and walked toward the wall. Jake watched in shock as the creature simply stepped through the metal wall and disappeared. A moment later, it stepped back through from the other side, its fur now showing hints of silver and blue. "Well, that solves one problem," Jake muttered, his mind racing to understand what he had just seen. Over the next few days, Jake learned more about his unusual companion. Shimmer could indeed walk through solid objects, though it seemed to take effort. The creature was also incredibly smart. When Jake showed it pictures on his tablet, Shimmer could point to things it wanted. It preferred the images of trees and open spaces, which made Jake feel sad about keeping it on a spaceship. But Shimmer did not seem unhappy. In fact, it appeared to enjoy Jake's company. When Jake came back from his work shifts, Shimmer would be waiting for him, its fur bright with what Jake came to recognize as excitement. The creature had figured out how to use Jake's water dispenser, and had even learned to open his food containers. The real surprise came on Jake's fourth day with Shimmer. He was in the ship's cargo bay, trying to fix a broken loading arm when Shimmer appeared beside him. Jake nearly jumped out of his skin. "You can't be here," he whispered, looking around to make sure no one else was nearby. "Someone might see you." Shimmer looked at the broken loading arm, then at Jake. It made a series of soft sounds that almost seemed like speech. Then it did something that made Jake's jaw drop. The creature placed one small paw on the loading arm's control panel. The broken machine hummed to life, moving smoothly for the first time in weeks. Somehow, Shimmer had fixed it just by touching, and Jake stared at his companion with new respect and growing worry. This was not just some smart animal. This was something far more advanced than anything he had ever heard of. That evening, Captain Hayes called a crew meeting. Jake felt his stomach drop as he entered the common room. Had someone seen Shimmer? Was he about to be arrested? "We have a problem," Captain Hayes announced to the 6-person crew. "I've been getting reports from other ships in the sector. The Xanthari military is conducting searches. They're looking for something, and they're not being polite about it." Dr. Sam Carter, the ship's medical officer, frowned. "What kind of searches?" "The kind where they board your ship and go through everything," Hayes replied. 3 cargo haulers have been detained already. Whatever they're looking for, it's important to them." Jake tried to keep his face calm, but his heart was pounding. The Xanthari Empire was one of the most powerful alien governments in known space. They were not the type to launch major search operations over something small. After the meeting, Jake hurried back to his quarters. Shimmer was waiting for him, its fur a worried shade of dark blue. Somehow the creature seemed to sense his anxiety. "We might have a problem, little friend," Jake said, sitting on his bed. Shimmer jumped up beside him and curled up against his leg. "I think someone important is looking for you." Over the next few days, the searches got closer. Jake heard reports over the ship's communication system. The Zenthari were asking specifically about small alien creatures. They had detailed scanners and were offering huge rewards for information. Jake knew he should tell Captain Hayes about Shimmer. It was the right thing to do for the safety of the whole crew. But every time he looked at his companion, he could not bring himself to do it. Shimmer trusted him completely. The creature would often fall asleep in Jake's lap while he read or watched movies on his tablet. One night, Jake was awakened by Shimmer nudging his arm urgently. The creature's fur was flashing red and orange, colors Jake had never seen before. Shimmer ran to the door, then back to Jake, clearly trying to tell him something. Jake got dressed quickly and followed Shimmer through the ship's corridors. The creature led him to the observation deck where it pressed against the large window and pointed outside with one small paw. Jake looked out into space and felt his blood turn to ice. A massive Zenthari warship was approaching the new horizon. Its hull was dark and covered in weapon ports. This was not a simple patrol vessel. This was a ship built for war. "Captain Hayes to all crew," came the voice over the intercom. "We're being hailed by a Zenthari military vessel. Report to stations, immediately." Jake looked down at Shimmer, who was now glowing with a soft silver light. The creature looked up at him with those large, trusting eyes, and Jake felt his heart break a little. "I won't let them hurt you," he whispered. "I promise." But as the Zenthari ship moved closer, Jake wondered if that was a promise he could keep. The Zenthari warship docked with the new horizon with a loud clang that shook the entire vessel. Jake felt Shimmer press closer against his leg as they hid in his quarters. The creature's fur had turned completely black, something Jake had never seen before. "All crew members report to the main corridor for inspection," Captain Hayes announced over the intercom. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the tension underneath. Jake looked down at Shimmer. "You need to hide, and I mean, really hide. Can you go through the walls and find somewhere safe?" Shimmer looked up at him with those large eyes and made a soft sound that somehow conveyed both fear and determination. The creature rubbed against Jake's hand once, then walked straight through the wall and disappeared. Jake took a deep breath and headed to the main corridor. The rest of the crew was already there, looking nervous. Captain Hayes stood at attention as 6 Zenthari soldiers marched aboard their ship. The aliens were tall and thin, with gray skin and eyes like black glass. They wore dark armor that seemed to absorb light. The lead soldier, who had more decorations on his armor than the others, stepped forward. "I am Commander Zarek of the Imperial Fleet. We are conducting a search for stolen property of the Empire." "What kind of property?" Captain Hayes asked carefully. "A creature of great value has been taken from its rightful owner," Zarek replied. "We have reason to believe it may be aboard vessels in this sector." Jake felt sweat running down his back, but he kept his face blank. Around him, his crewmates looked confused and worried. Dr. Carter stepped forward. "Commander, we're just a cargo hauler. We don't deal in exotic animals or anything like that." Zarek's black eyes fixed on her. "Nevertheless, we will search your vessel. Any attempt to interfere will be considered an act of war against the Empire." The search took 2 hours. Jake watched as the Zenthari soldiers went through every room, every storage compartment, every corner of the ship. They had scanning devices that hummed and beeped as they swept them over surfaces. Jake's heart nearly stopped when they entered his quarters. The lead scanner operator ran his device over Jake's bed, his desk, his closet. The machine made different sounds as it moved, but nothing that seemed to alarm the soldier. Jake held his breath as the alien swept the scanner over the exact spot where Shimmer usually slept. Nothing. The scanner showed no sign that anything unusual had ever been in the room. After the soldiers left his quarters, Jake waited 10 minutes before whispering, "Shimmer, are you okay?" The creature materialized right in front of him, appearing out of thin air. Its fur was still that worried black color, but it seemed unharmed. Jake realized that Shimmer had not just hidden by phasing through walls. Somehow it had made itself completely invisible to the scanners. When the search was finished, Commander Zarek gathered the crew again. "We found nothing on this vessel. However, our search will continue throughout this system. If anyone has information about the missing creature, the reward is substantial." He held up a small device that projected an image into the air. Jake's blood turned to ice. It was Shimmer, shown in perfect detail with its color-changing fur and wing-like flaps. "This is a stellwing," Zarek continued. "They are extremely rare and valuable. This particular specimen belongs to Baroness Zelia Vorthak of the Noble House. Anyone found harboring it will face execution." Jake felt the world spin around him. He had been caring for the pet of alien royalty. No wonder the Zinthari were searching so hard. After the soldiers left, Captain Hayes called an emergency meeting. The crew sat around the small table in their common room, everyone looking shaken. "This is bad," Hayes said bluntly. "The Zinthari don't make threats they don't intend to keep. If they're willing to search every ship in the sector, this creature must be incredibly important." "What if someone on the ship does have it?" asked Pete Collins, their navigator. "I mean, hypothetically." Hayes looked around the table. "Then that person needs to turn it over immediately. I won't risk my crew for anyone's foolish mistake." Jake felt every eye in the room on him, but he kept quiet. Dr. Carter spoke up instead. "What if the creature doesn't want to go back? What if it's running away for a good reason?" "That's not our problem," Hayes replied firmly. "Our job is to keep this crew safe and our ship flying. Nothing else matters." That night, Jake lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Shimmer curled up beside him. The creature's fur was a soft, sad blue that made Jake's heart ache. He could feel Shimmer's fear, as if the creature was projecting its emotions directly into his mind. "I heard what they said too," Jake whispered. "But I can't just hand you over to them. Not after everything we've been through." Shimmer lifted its head and looked at him. For a moment, Jake felt something strange in his mind. Images flashed through his thoughts, but they were not his memories. He saw a large ship with golden walls. He saw a tall alien woman with jeweled clothing. He felt loneliness and sadness so deep it made him want to cry. "Those are your memories, aren't they?" Jake asked softly. "You're showing me where you came from." More images came. Jake saw Shimmer in a cage made of crystal. He felt the creature's fear and desperation. Then he saw Shimmer escaping during what looked like a battle, getting hurt by energy weapons as it fled. "You weren't stolen," Jake realized. "You ran away." Shimmer made a soft sound and rubbed against Jake's hand. The creature's fear was still there. But now Jake could feel something else. Trust. Shimmer trusted him to make the right choice. Jake made his decision then. He could not turn Shimmer over to people who kept it in a cage. He could not send his friend back to a life of loneliness and fear, even if it meant risking his own life and the lives of his crewmates. "We'll figure something out," he promised. "I won't let them take you back." But even as he said the words, Jake wondered how he could possibly keep that promise. The Zinthari Empire had ships, soldiers, and technology far beyond anything humans possessed. And somewhere out there, Baroness Zelia Vorthak was searching for her missing pet with the full power of an interstellar empire behind her. 3 days after the search, Jake was fixing a broken pipe in the engine room when Captain Hayes found him. Her face was pale and serious in a way that made Jake's stomach drop. "Jake, we need to talk," she said quietly. "My office. Now." Jake followed her through the ship's corridors, his mind racing. Had someone seen Shimmer? Had Captain Hayes figured out his secret? When they reached her small office, she closed the door behind them and activated the privacy screen. "I know you have it," Hayes said without any introduction. Jake opened his mouth to deny it, but the look in her eyes stopped him. She knew. Somehow, Captain Hayes knew about Shimmer. "How?" Jake asked weakly. "Because I've been watching you for 3 days," Hayes replied. "You're nervous all the time. You keep checking your quarters. And yesterday I saw you talking to your room when no one else was there." She sat down heavily in her chair. "Show me." Jake felt trapped. He could lie, but what was the point? Hayes already knew the truth. He pressed his communicator. "Shimmer, can you come here? It's okay." A moment later, Shimmer phased through the wall of Hayes's office. The creature looked around carefully, then moved to stand beside Jake. Its fur was a nervous mix of gray and blue. Captain Hayes stared at Shimmer for a long moment. "Dear God, Jake, do you have any idea what you've done?" "I saved its life," Jake said firmly. "I found Shimmer hurt and dying on that mining station. I couldn't just leave it there." "That thing belongs to Zinthari royalty," Hayes said, her voice rising. "They'll destroy this entire ship to get it back. They'll kill all of us." Shimmer made a soft, sad sound and its fur turned darker. Jake could feel the creature's emotions again. Fear, guilt, and something that felt like apology. "Shimmer didn't choose to belong to anyone," Jake said. "It ran away from them. I've seen its memories. Captain, they kept it in a cage. It was miserable." Hayes looked at Shimmer again, and for a moment her expression softened. The creature was beautiful and clearly intelligent. But then she shook her head. "It doesn't matter, Jake. We can't fight the Zinthari Empire. We have to give it back." Before Jake could respond, alarms started blaring throughout the ship. The emergency lights came on, bathing everything in red. Hayes activated her communication panel. "Report," she ordered. "Captain," came Pete's voice from the bridge. "We've got company, big company. There's a Zinthari flagship approaching our position." Hayes and Jake looked at each other. They both knew what this meant. A flagship was not just a warship. It was a mobile palace, the kind of vessel that carried the highest nobility of the Empire. "Baroness Zelia Vorthak has come for her pet," Hayes said quietly. The communication system crackled to life with a new voice. It was female, speaking in accented but perfect English. The voice was cold and commanding. "Human vessel New Horizon. This is Baroness Zelia Vorthak of the Zinthari Empire. You will prepare to be boarded immediately. Any resistance will result in your destruction." Hayes looked at Jake with desperation in her eyes. "We can still fix this. Turn over the creature and maybe she'll show mercy." Jake felt Shimmer press against his leg. The creature was trembling now, its fur cycling through colors so fast it hurt to look at. Through their strange connection, Jake felt Shimmer's terror. The creature would rather die than go back to its cage. "No," Jake said firmly. "I won't do it." "Jake, be reasonable," Hayes pleaded. "Think about the crew. Think about Dr. Carter, about Pete, about everyone else on this ship." Jake closed his eyes. Hayes was right about the crew. They did not deserve to die because of his choice. But he could not abandon Shimmer either. "Let me talk to her," Jake said suddenly. "The Baroness. Let me explain what happened." Hayes stared at him as if he had lost his mind. "You want to negotiate with Zinthari royalty? Jake, they don't negotiate with humans. We're barely more than animals to them." "Maybe," Jake said. "But I have to try." 30 minutes later, Jake found himself standing in the New Horizons docking bay as the Baroness's shuttle arrived. Shimmer stood beside him, visible for the first time since Jake had found it. The creature's fur was pure white now, a color Jake had never seen before. The shuttle doors opened, and Baroness Zelia Vorthak stepped out. She was tall and elegant, with pale blue skin and long silver hair. Her clothing was made of materials that seemed to shift and flow like liquid metal. Behind her came 6 guards in armor that made Commander Zarek's equipment look primitive. The Baroness's eyes immediately fixed on Shimmer. For a moment her cold expression cracked, showing relief and something that might have been love. But when she looked at Jake, her face became hard again. "You are the human who stole my Stellwing," she said, her voice like ice. "I didn't steal anything," Jake replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "I found Shimmer hurt and saved its life. I didn't even know what it was." "Its name is Lumina," the Baroness said sharply, "and it has been bonded to my family for 300 years. You have committed an act of theft against the Empire." Jake felt Shimmer move closer to him. The creature made a soft sound, and suddenly Jake's mind was flooded with images again. But this time, they were not just Shimmer's memories. Through some kind of psychic link, Shimmer was sharing Jake's memories with the Baroness. The Baroness's Eyes widened as she saw Jake finding the injured creature. She witnessed his gentle care, his worry when Shimmer was hurt, his joy when the creature recovered. She felt Jake's love for Shimmer and his determination to protect it. When the connection ended, the Baroness stared at Jake with a completely different expression. The cold anger was gone, replaced by something like wonder. "You truly did not know what Lumina was," she said slowly. "You saved its life expecting nothing in return." "That's right," Jake said, "and I won't let you put it back in a cage. Shimmer is not property. It's a living being with feelings and thoughts." The Baroness looked at Shimmer, who had moved to stand between Jake and the guards. The creature's white fur was now showing, streaks of gold, and it was looking directly at its former owner. "Lumina," the Baroness said softly. "Do you wish to stay with this human?" Shimmer looked at Jake, then back at the Baroness. It made a series of soft sounds that somehow conveyed both sadness and determination. The creature did not want to hurt the Baroness, but it also did not want to go back to its old life. The Baroness was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was thoughtful rather than angry. "You have given me much to consider, human. What is your name?" "Jake Martinez," he replied. "Jake Martinez," she repeated. "You have shown me something I did not expect to find among your species. Perhaps it is time for me to reconsider some things as well." The silence in the docking bay stretched on for what felt like hours. Jake watched the Baroness's face as she studied both him and Shimmer. Her expression had changed completely from the cold anger of a few minutes ago. Now she looked confused and thoughtful. "In 300 years, the Baroness said slowly, no one has ever asked Lumina what it wanted. We always assumed it was happy because it was well cared for." Shimmer made a soft sound and stepped toward the Baroness. Its fur shifted to a gentle pink color that Jake had learned meant affection. The creature still loved its former owner, but it also wanted something different from life. "Your Excellency," one of the guards said in the harsh Zenthari language, "the human must be punished according to law." The Baroness held up her hand to silence him. "I am aware of our laws, Captain Vorek." She looked at Jake again. "By rights, I should execute you and your entire crew for harboring my Stellwing." Jake felt his heart stop, but he kept his voice steady. "I understand. But before you do that, let me ask you something. What would you have done if you found Shimmer hurt and dying? Would you have walked away?" The question seemed to surprise her. "Of course not. Lumina is precious to me." "Then you understand why I couldn't walk away either," Jake said. "I didn't know who Shimmer belonged to. I just knew it was hurt and needed help." The Baroness studied him for another long moment. Then she did something that shocked everyone in the room. She smiled. "You are a remarkable human, Jake Martinez. In all my years, I have met thousands of beings from dozens of species. Most of them wanted something from me: money, power, favor, protection. But you ask for nothing except the freedom of a creature you barely know." She walked over to Shimmer and knelt down beside it. The creature nuzzled her hand, its fur showing, swirls of pink and gold that meant happiness mixed with sadness. "Lumina has been with my family since before I was born," the Baroness continued. "My grandmother bonded with it when she was young. When she died, the bond passed to my mother. When my mother died, it came to me." She stroked Shimmer's head gently. "I thought I was giving it everything it needed. A beautiful home, the finest, food, protection from all danger. But no freedom," Jake said quietly. "No freedom," the Baroness agreed. "No choice. No chance to explore or make friends or decide its own path." She looked up at Jake. "Through Lumina's memories, I felt how happy it was with you, how alive it felt when it could help you fix things on your ship, how much it enjoyed the simple pleasure of choosing where to sleep." Shimmer moved between the Baroness and Jake, looking at both of them with those large, intelligent eyes. Its fur was cycling through many colors now, showing the complexity of its emotions. The Baroness stood up and faced her guards. "I am making a decision that will shock the Empire," she announced in English so Jake could understand. I am granting Lumina its freedom to choose its own life. The guards looked horrified. Captain Vorek stepped forward. Your Excellency, a Stellwing cannot simply be released. They are sacred creatures, bonded to noble houses for centuries. The Council will never accept this. The Council will accept what I decide, the Baroness said firmly. I am not releasing Lumina into the wild. I am allowing it to choose between its old life and its new one. She turned to Shimmer. Lumina, you must decide. You can return with me to the palace. You will have comfort and safety, but you will be confined as before. Or you can stay with Jake Martinez and live freely among the stars. The choice is yours. Jake held his breath as Shimmer looked back and forth between them. He could feel the creature's internal struggle through their mental connection. Shimmer loved the Baroness, but it also loved its new life of freedom and adventure. Finally, Shimmer walked to Jake and sat down beside him. Its fur settled into a warm golden color that Jake now knew meant contentment and home. The Baroness nodded slowly. I understand. She looked at Jake with an expression that was both sad and proud. It seems I have lost my companion, but gained something more valuable. A new understanding of what love truly means. Your Excellency, Captain Vorek protested again. The law clearly states, the law will be changed. The Baroness cut him off. Effective immediately, I am declaring Jake Martinez to be an honorary protector of the Stellwing. This grants him full authority to care for Lumina and travel freely throughout Empire space. She reached into her robes and pulled out a small crystal device. This is an Imperial seal. It carries my full authority and protection. No Xanthari ship or official may harm you or your crew while you carry it. Jake took the crystal with shaking hands. It was warm and seemed to pulse with its own inner light. I don't know what to say. Say that you will care for Lumina as well. As you have already done, the Baroness replied. Say that you will treat it as a friend, not as property. I promise, Jake said solemnly. The Baroness knelt down one more time to say goodbye to Shimmer. The creature nuzzled her hand and made soft sounds that conveyed love and gratitude. When she stood up, there were tears in her eyes. I have a proposal for you, Jake Martinez, she said. The Empire has many worlds, and I travel to all of them. If you ever grow tired of your cargo runs, I would be honored to have you serve as my personal Stellwing expert. The position comes with a ship, a crew, and more money than you could spend in a lifetime. Jake looked down at Shimmer, who was now glowing with a soft silver light. Through their connection, he felt the creature's opinion. It would be happy anywhere as long as they were together. Thank you for the offer, Jake said. But I think we're happy where we are. Simple cargo runs among the stars, helping people when we can and staying free. The Baroness smiled. I thought you might say that. The offer remains open if you ever change your mind. As the Baroness and her guards prepared to leave, she turned back one final time. You have taught me something important today, Jake Martinez. You have shown me that the greatest act of love is sometimes letting go. After they left, Captain Hayes found Jake in the docking bay. Shimmer was curled up in his lap, purring softly. Well, Hayes said, looking at the Imperial seal in Jake's hand. I guess we're under royal protection now. That's not something you see every day. Jake grinned. Just wait until you see what Shimmer can do with the navigation computer. Our cargo runs are about to get a lot more interesting. As the New Horizon prepared to jump to hyperspace, Jake stood at the observation window with Shimmer beside him. The creature's fur was a happy mixture of gold and blue, and through their bond, Jake felt its excitement about the adventures to come. Somewhere in the distance, the Baroness's flagship was also preparing to leave. Jake hoped she would find her own kind of happiness, perhaps by freeing other creatures who deserved the chance to choose their own paths. Ready for our next adventure, partner? Jake asked. Shimmer looked up at him with those large, intelligent eyes and made a sound that needed no translation. It meant yes, it meant home, and it meant that some bonds were stronger than law, stronger than tradition, and stronger than the distance between stars.